God's creation is something else, isn't it? It's God's country out here, that's for sure. Well, everybody, I'd like to welcome you to my new homestead, if you want to call it that. At least for the next couple of years, anyway. So as some of you guys know, if you saw my last video from, it seems like eons ago, I started a new job out here in beautiful Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And I was on the hunt for a little piece of property that I could call my own, at least for the next couple of years. I did a lot of extensive searching on websites like Zillow and Craigslist, trying to find just a place to rent. You know, nothing too fancy, but my priority was that whatever place I found had a small shop or barn or somewhere where I could work on my tractors. And after a couple weeks of searching and long nights spent online, I managed to find this little place here on a 1/4 acre, and the deal was just right. It seemed like one of those deals that was just, you know, happened at the right time, and everything just kind of fell into place. So within the next couple weeks, I was busy moving in, and honestly, I've been here for a month and a half now, and I'm still busy moving stuff in, just a little at a time. But as you can see, I've got both of my trucks here, and I've got enough room for my trailer as well, which is pretty cool. So I've been making a lot of runs with the trucks and the trailer from New Jersey up to here, bringing stuff up. And I think I've got most of my shop space pretty much settled for now. So it'll be a nice little workspace for me to work on some projects and do some tinkering the next couple of years. And it should hold me off until I can finally settle down on a nice little piece of farmland somewhere and, you know, get married and really start building my collection. But for now, this'll do. So this is where you'll be seeing most of my videos from now on. I've pretty much moved everything out of my garage back home in New Jersey. One of my garden tractors, the old John Deere 210, is still sitting there for right now until I figure out what I'm doing with it. But I just haven't used it much, so it's been sitting. So I left it there for now. So I figured I might as well give you guys a little tour and show you the new space I'm dealing with. And I'll show you some of the new projects that I sort of accidentally fell upon that I'll be featuring in upcoming videos, as you can see. So the house that I rented is actually 2 units. I live in the unit on the left, which is the original house, and then my neighbor lives in the unit on the right there. And technically I'm only allowed to have this one bay on this side of the garage here, but my neighbor does not use this side here except to park his car in the winter, so he gave me the okay to use it. So I've been packing this place full of stuff, and like I said, I've just about got everything moved in. There's a couple last things I need to bring up from home yet, but the last couple weeks after moving in were spent just kind of getting stuff organized, honestly. And I'm still working on it, so it's still, if it looks a little cluttered and messy over there in the workbench area, you'll have to excuse that until I can get everything put away. So anyway, this is where I'll be doing most of my projects and wrenching from now on. As you can see, I've got most of my tractors, or my toys, wedged in on this side over here, and then I left this bay open. And this barn is actually pretty deep. I'd say it's probably about 30 foot deep, so there's just enough room for me to fit either one of my trucks in here with the door closed, which is really nice, honestly. Now the barn's over 100 years old, as is the house, so of course it's not going to be perfect. I mean, you can see the floor is starting to sink, and the only somewhat level surface I have is from this half back. But you know, it's better than working outside. I can't complain. So as you can see, I've got some of the machines up here. The 318, which is still set up in its snow gear because I just haven't had enough of a use for it and haven't had the time to switch it over to snow duty. And I figure out here in Pennsylvania we'll be getting a lot more snow than in Jersey, and it'll only be a couple more months before we're going to be plowing snow again. So I figure, you know what, I'm just going to leave the 318 as it is, sitting in its winter clothes. So I really haven't done hardly anything with it. The 318 was actually the first tractor that I brought up here because it had the blade attached, and I was using it on the trailer for bookends to keep everything, like all my shop tools and the workbench and stuff, stabilized, and it worked pretty well for that. And then I brought up the 782, as you can see here. And then I brought up the mystery garden tractor, the special one that I talked about in my last video, which is here, but I purposely moved it out of the garage for the sake of this video because I'm going to do a special follow-up video on that one. Like I said, the 210 is still back in Jersey. I'm just not sure what I'm doing with it right now because I've only started it once in the last 6 or 7 months, and it just doesn't get used anymore. And I figure if I'm not using it, then there's no point in letting it take up space in here. I got my air compressor station over here. I got a little MIG, yeah, right, I wish. My little Lincoln arc welder, old tombstone welder set up over here. And I went to the local junkyard and got some old salvage garden tractor rims to hang the leads up, so that worked out pretty good. Back here I got some shelves where I'm storing all my equipment and tools and things like that. And got my toolboxes set up in the back corner there. 2 workbenches set up right here, and then the parts washer and my engine hoist. And I've just been hanging up a lot of my little knickknacks and stuff. Those are the old plates off of my late uncle's pickup, the red F-150 sitting out there. Those plates were actually on 3 of his previous trucks, so they're actually about 25 years old. Got to have the Ford sign because that's all I'll drive around here. And this is one of the old no trespassing signs that used to be up on a post in the old lane that runs alongside my old house. Years ago, that was the driveway that led you down to the farm, you know, when my grandfather was still living there, and he put up a couple of these signs, and this one was right behind my house in the hedgerow, but it had just become overtaken by weeds and brush. So I cut the weeds down, I took the sign out of the ground, and I brought the sign up with me. I thought it would make a nice piece of wall art. Here's that old John Deere Model 80 cart tailgate that used to be on my uncle's 80 cart. It's seen better days, and it's pretty much beyond usable at this point, but I figured it would be another cool piece of wall art, so I hung it up and thought that was kind of cool. You can see I'm just kind of working on getting some stuff organized. Things are still a bit of a mess here, so you'll have to bear with me until I can get that all figured out. Here's a little John Deere JX75 mower that I picked up. It wasn't running because the fuel line was rotted out and it was leaking like a sieve. I put a new fuel line on it. The thing started right up and ran beautifully. I'm not sure what I'm doing with this one yet. I'm probably going to end up selling it because I have a 14SB back home in New Jersey, which is a silver deck model. It's the older version of this, pretty much the same mower. And I've been using that one at home. I actually don't, for this rent year, I am not mowing the grass here, unfortunately. It's only 1/4 of an acre, so it's not a whole lot to mow. But I missed out on the contract, so I'm not mowing the grass here this year, but I will be plowing the snow in the winter, so the 318 will have to come out for that. But like I said, I'm not mowing the grass here right now, so I don't have a use for a walk-behind mower, and my 14SB back home is just kind of sitting around. So maybe if I can get that JX75 sold, I'll get the 14SB brought up here, and I don't know, I think this little piece of land back here would be a good workout for it. But then again, I've also got mower decks for all my garden tractors, so I don't know. I'm just not mowing as much grass as I used to, as you can tell. It's been quite a change up. It feels weird not having any significant grass to mow, but I don't know, maybe I'll have to bring my lawn care business out here and start doing that on the weekends. I got my little fuel station here set up with the little portable gas caddy. I bought this last year because I was tired of having to carry 10 gas cans with me to the gas station. And it's pretty nice. It's a 30-gallon tank, and it comes with this little hand crank pump. Unfortunately, I broke the original line that came with it, so I have to get some half-decent fuel line to replace it with. But when you've got all these machines, and especially like when I take them all to shows, it's nice to bring that gas caddy with me because I can fill them all up right there instead of having to carry a bunch of gas cans around. And now on to the couple of new additions. I'm sure you guys are wondering what the deal is with these two machines, so I'll just get right into it. This is one of the, actually both of these were those kind of deals that you just can't refuse. I seem to be pretty good at finding those kind of deals, and now that I live out here in Lancaster County where you can find pretty much any piece of equipment you could ever ask for, these deals just kind of come up out of the woodwork. And I work at an old International Harvester dealership, so you never know what's going to come in on trade. One of our salesmen worked out a trade deal with a local farm, one of his main accounts, and this particular farm traded in, I think, 5 tractors on a newer Kubota, if I remember correctly, and this was one of the tractors in that deal. And I made the salesman an offer on it, and I ended up bringing it home pretty cheap, and I figured you don't see a whole lot of these anymore. So, and I figured it would be a good way for me to get started in, fixing and collecting the larger tractors. This is the smallest tractor that International Harvester ever built, but, it's better than nothing. And my grandfather taught me how to drive one of these many moons ago at the old 4-H fair, so I do have I have a little place in my heart for these things. This is a 1979 International Harvester Cub. This is the very last year that these tractors were made, and as far as I know, they had the longest production run and were one of the most popular selling tractors built by International Harvester. These were built from 1947 to 1979, and they went through several body styles and generational changes, and most of the ones you saw were red. They were considered the Farmall Cub, and then they switched to the International Cub in 1964, and shortly after came out with the International Cub Low Boy, which turned out to be far more popular. And as the years went on, they sold less and less of these regular Cubs and more of the Low Boys. And this one, I was kind of surprised to look up the serial number and find out that it's a 79 model, because it's the last year they were made, and it's the 520th to last one built. And the last year they made them, for what I understand, the Cubs were mostly painted red from the factory, but you could special order them white and yellow if you wanted. And if you can't tell by my Cub Cadet collection that I've had over the years, I have a soft spot for the white and yellow tractors. So I figured, you don't see a whole lot of these white and yellow long stripe Cubs, and the deal was just, it was just right. It just worked out, and it was small and light enough to fit on my little single axle utility trailer, so I figured, why not? I've had to do a little bit of work to it. It's not perfect. I mean, I don't know what you'd expect from a 40-year-old tractor. The first thing I did to it was replace the fuel cap. Luckily, working at an IH dealer, this was actually replaced under warranty. It was considered a warranty item because IH went through a lawsuit with these 40 years ago. The original gas caps on these tractors were not vented, so supposedly somebody was smoking a cigarette, when they were fueling up the tractor, and the fumes ignited and killed the guy. I don't know why you'd smoke a cigarette while you were fueling a tractor, but needless to say, it got International Harvester tangled up in a lawsuit, and for 40 plus years now they've had to replace these gas caps, so that was replaced under warranty, still honored 40 years later, which I thought was kind of neat. I had to put tubes in the front tires because they were both going flat. They're not great. I mean, this one looks like this one looks a little bit newer, like it was replaced at some point. This one's not quite as good, but they're holding there fine now. And somebody before me put a new battery in it, but it was a cheap Deca lawn and garden battery, and they kind of rigged up the cables to work, and they were barely making a good connection, so I had to take the battery out and clean up the connections there. The thing wouldn't even start on its own when I first got it. I had to do a little rigging to make the cables work again, but it cranks up every time now. It still needs a little bit of work, obviously. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect. One of these days I'll take the hood off and hammer out the dents. The carburetor needs to be cleaned and rebuilt because I'm sure it's just had crap gas run through it for years and years, and it's a little cold-blooded. It can be difficult to start. I usually have to run it with the choke pulled out about that much. Luckily, working at an IH dealer, I was able to get a cheap carb rebuild kit for it, and this is what's considered an OEM kit, apparently. This Tisco brand, I guess, and it's American made, so I'm hoping it's half decent quality. So one of these days I'll tear that carburetor apart and start rebuilding it, or get it all cleaned up. The governor needs a little adjusting too because the throttle response is very slow, and the muffler's got a little hole in it that needs to be welded up, so I'll get to doing that one of these days. It's nice that it has the little underslung exhaust. That way the fumes kind of stay out of your face. And somebody swapped over a pan seat from a Farmall Cub. I believe this should have the later style cushion seat, the deluxe seat, and the little bracket that keeps the seat held in the post is missing. There's supposed to be a couple bolts down there that hold it in place, but it's not there, so I can spin the whole seat. It's got the PTO setup, which is kind of an oddball. These are 515 RPM, and they rotate counterclockwise, which is different from any other PTO setup on any tractor, so they're kind of useless for anything except running a belly mower. But it's neat to see one intact anyway. For those of you who are not familiar with these tractors, this same exact transmission was used in what eventually became the Cub Cadet, And the Cub Cadet name was created as basically like a little companion to the original Cub. They jumped around between a couple different names, such as Cubette, Cub Junior, Farmette, I think Ranchette or something like that, and eventually decided on Cub Cadet. So that's how that came to be. And if you look at it, it looks like just an overgrown wide frame Cub Cadet, like an overgrown 149 basically, with the same style of decal. Being a 79 model, this has a couple of added creature comforts that the earlier Cubs did not have, such as key starting. The earlier ones had, well, the earliest ones had a hand cranked start up front, and then they switched to pull start, like a pull cable with a little switch instead of a key. What else? This one has a 12-volt negative ground system, so it has an alternator from the factory. The earlier ones had the 6-volt positive ground system with a generator, so that's kind of neat. That's one of the little modern features of this tractor. This thing is kind of neat because it's an old tractor. It's a very old and aged design, but it has a lot of the modern creature comforts. I think they may have used it for cultivating. You can see that the wheels are spaced out in the wide position, and the rear wheels are also flipped out into the wide position. So I'm gonna, when I really get into tinkering with this thing, I think I'm gonna narrow it up as much as I can. So I don't really know what I'm going to do with this one yet. I mean, eventually I am going to sell it. I'm not going to hang on to it, but we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to get a plow for it and take it to plow days yet or not. So that's the first project. I was getting ready to tear into this one, and then my judgment got the better of me, and I ended up getting the itch for a 2-cylinder. I'm sure my grandfather's probably rolling over in his grave because I still haven't touched his 60. That is waiting restoration. But I ended up coming home just this past weekend. I took a quick trip up to upstate New York, and I picked up this 1941 John Deere H. And this was probably one of the best deals I've ever gotten, because these H's are in pretty high demand for what they are. They usually bring good money for their size. These were the smallest 2-cylinder tractor with a horizontal engine. The only model that was smaller than this was the L and the LA, which were vertical engines with a foot clutch. So the H was the smallest traditional 2-cylinder with the horizontal engine and a hand clutch. The smallest tractor that came out of the Waterloo, Iowa factory, as far as I know. This one, the story on this was that it was a restoration project. An older gentleman had it. He passed away before he ever got to finish it, but it doesn't need a whole lot more to get back into running condition. The engine was supposedly rebuilt and bored 125 thousandths oversize. He had the carburetor and the intake and exhaust manifold completely redone. Radiator was all redone. Steering was all redone and rebuilt. You can see the new paint, new tires on the front. I think the front hubs were redone as well. And I don't know about the transmission. I'm not completely sure if that's been apart. I can see some oil leaking from the rear cover. You'll also notice that it has the manual adjustment handles for the lift, and that's because it came with a number H1 single bottom plow, a mid-mounted single bottom plow, which I have sitting outside here just for the sake of storage space. These are kind of a neat setup, a little bit different than your traditional plow, but they were designed specifically for the H, and this plow came with all the hardware needed to mount it to the tractor. So once I get the tractor running, I'm going to try and get this mounted up and maybe take it to a plow day. I don't know. We'll see. So that just made the deal even sweeter. I mentioned that it was probably the deal of the year. It kind of came up by accident. It was on the John Deere free auction page on Facebook, and the bid started so low, I figured it was going to have a ton of activity, and I put in a bid. I opened the bid up, and turns out it was just me and one other bidder, so I ended up winning it. And I was like, whoop, I guess we're taking a trip up to upstate New York this weekend. So it ended up being about 8 hours each way, and it was a good little trip, though. It was nice to get out and see some new territory, and to finally get my hands on an H. I've kind of wanted one of these low-key for a couple years now, and I'm still in shock that I actually have one. Like I said, it shouldn't take too much to get it running. He gave me a basket full of parts. Here's the shutters that need to be put back on. The water pipe needs to go back on. Rebuilt magneto is ready to go back on, and a box full of new old stock parts, just miscellaneous gaskets and stuff that I need to put back on it. But like I said, it shouldn't take much to get it running. I just have to get the mag put back on and get it timed, and then get the water pump on and fill it with fluids, and we'll see if she runs. So this will make a good project. I'm planning to make some videos on that. And I'm kind of, my thinking with purchasing this was that it would be a good leeway into, you know, working on and getting familiar with the 2-cylinder tractors. I've had my grandfather's 60, and I've been slowly tinkering with that, but up until now I just haven't had the space to work on it. So I guess what I'll do is get this one running, enjoy it for a couple years, and then send it down the road and start, you know, bring the 60 up here and start really working on that, because that thing's just been itching to get put under cover. So eventually I'll bring that up here, but in the meantime, the 8 should be a good little project. It's nice to have some, you know, slightly larger tractors in the collection now, even though it is still technically a garden tractor at heart, because these were considered a garden tractor back in their day, and this is an earlier one too. So it's still got the original hand start. It hasn't been converted over to 12-volt electric start. There's no electrical system on this tractor at all, which is kind of neat. Keep it plain and simple, just the way I like it. So yeah, that's the other project I picked up, the 41 John Deere H. I figure now I have the smallest International Harvester tractor and one of the smallest John Deere tractors made, and they fit in here quite snug, as you can tell. And I've still got plenty of room to fit other garden tractors in here if I, you know, get the urge to buy another one, God forbid. Obviously, I don't use them as much as I used to. At this point, I just have them up here to take to shows, and like I said, I don't have the yard space, so I can't. It's not like I'm going out and mowing grass every day like I used to back in Jersey, but hopefully next year I'll be able to get the contract to mow the lawn here, so then I can put the tractors to work. I will be mowing not mowing, but plowing the snow here in the wintertime when we do get some of the big snowstorms. So I have to plow this section here, this parking area, and the entire driveway that comes down and goes down the hill and wraps all the way around in the back there. So that'll be a good workout for whichever tractor I end up using, which will most likely be the 318, but we'll see. I got to do some work to it. It's got some hydraulic leaks, and I still have to pull the Onan engine out and reseal it and just kind of freshen it up. I am planning to make a separate video on that, but I don't know when that'll be. I don't have time anymore, unfortunately, but I'll get it figured out eventually. So yeah, I mean, you can see I still got some tools and things to put away. I'm still getting my toolbox organized, and I'm still waiting on some sockets that I ordered to replace all the ones that went missing out of my set. So hopefully soon I can clear up some workbench space and really start, you know, working on stuff. But I'm excited to be able to call this place home and to have this nice little space where I can tinker and make YouTube videos once again. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of my new home and my new shop. I guess you could call it the Michael T. JD60 headquarters if you wanted. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for my channel and for my collection as well. Living out here in Lancaster County, you never know what kind of good deals you'll come across, and it seems like there's an old tractor for sale on pretty much every corner. So I don't know, we'll see what the future holds. I'm excited to start bringing you guys some new videos of new equipment and from a new location as well, and can't wait to see what'll be rolling in here in the future. And hopefully soon I'll start tearing into the Cub and the H, and I'm also planning to make a video on the mystery garden tractor that I mentioned before, and I'm excited to show you guys that one. So stay tuned for that. If you liked the video, as always, please feel free to comment, rate, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.